What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I am Bob Wankel alongside Anthony Sanfilippo. It is the end of the week. It's the middle of an important Phillies road trip. And Anthony and I think, are coming into today's podcast with differing views about what transpired in Atlanta. I personally think it's the same old story for the Phillies. Anthony, however, is ready to hand out trophies after a 4-game split, so let's jump right into it. Anthony, I'm just kidding, of course, but I have to tell you, we talked a little bit back and forth last night in text messages, and you had said it right. If you looked at this series at the beginning of the week and you said the Phillies are going to go down to Atlanta and split, you'd probably sign up for that, and I guess that's true. The only problem is I watched all the games, and I'm not happy. So let's get into this.
Yeah, and let me say it that way, Bob, because I don't think we're that far apart. I think that we're kind of along the same wavelength in the sense that you looked at this series and went, man, they could have swept Atlanta. Like they could have. I mean, they really could have swept the Braves. At least 3 out of 4, obviously. So yeah, you're frustrated that those games that went the wrong way didn't go the right way, and we're going to talk about them individually because there's a lot to unpack with those games. But we did say at the beginning of the week, when we recorded the last episode, that, hey, you come out of this week, split in Atlanta, win 2 and 3 in New York, and you're feeling pretty good about it. So you can't go back on that, right? I mean, you can't go back on the long view. And the long view of things has been, if we go back even further, when we said, look at this month of May and how difficult it's going to be going into the beginning of June. And there's going to be like this 30-game stretch. And, let's see where they're at after that, because then the schedule lightens up. Well, as of right now, they're a game over 500 in that stretch with 6, 9, 12 games to go in it. So far, so good in a way. We were saying, hey, you go 500 in this stretch, that's a good record to have. So we, again, taking the long view, I'm not handing out trophies, but I'm saying they're treading water. They're doing what they have to do because it should get better down the road. Now, of course, that could always go awry. So many things could go wrong. We've seen it in the past, and this is why I think you feel the way you feel, because it's like no matter what, they're going to invent new ways to lose games. And they're just inventing new ways to lose games to good teams right now. Just wait till they invent new ways to lose games to bad teams, and then we'll get really pissed off.
Yeah, so now if you listen to our first show this week, I think that we actually came across fairly positive on the heels of a 2-4 homestand against the Padres and Dodgers. And just to sort of reiterate some of those points that we discussed, I mean, listen, big picture here, starting pitchings look pretty good. I do have a little bit of a concern about Ranger Suarez that's starting to slowly creep up. But overall, hey, I actually tweeted this morning, of the NL pitchers with 30 innings logged this season, the Phillies have 4 starters in the top 20 in terms of WAR per Fangraphs. You have Zach Wheeler, number 2, Aaron Nola, number 8, Kyle Gibson, I believe, comes in at 16, and Zach Eflin at 20. And Eflin would probably be a little bit higher if he simply had more innings pitched. So you look at the rotation, you feel really good about it. You look at some hitters here with a track record that haven't really performed all that well yet, and you kind of expect them to all get going, and you feel pretty good about it. You have to turn a blind eye to the bullpen and some of the issues out there, and then the manager. I just feel like that this team is better than they've played. I still feel like that, even though I was frustrated by what I watched over the 4 games in Atlanta this week. And so my overall thesis about where this team kind of stands right now probably remains largely unchanged. That being said, it is such a damn difficult product to watch and to take in, night out, and I get paid to do it, so I can't even really complain, right? And for those of you that don't know, we're kind of trying to work out some kinks. Anthony's going to start pitching in on the Phillies coverage at Crossing Broad as well, so we get paid to do this. That being said, I mean, my God, to just take in this product 3 to 3.5 hours every night is tough, and I feel for fans, and you guys know, I'm a Phillies fan, right? I do it professionally, you're doing it professionally, but we want this team to win, and so it's very hard when you get nights like really Monday night where they win comfortably, no less, and it sets off a chain reaction of events that is just baffling. And I think that I always try to reset things here on each show, because I know that we have loyal listeners that jump in and listen every single show. But if you haven't, we're not guys that are you fire everybody, he's got to go, like the manager stinks. We're not those guys. But you watch Monday night unfold and going to Corey Knebel with a 4-run lead on Monday night, and then not being able to go back to him on Tuesday night when you could have had one of your best wins of the season. And it's not just that you couldn't go to Corey Knebel, it's also that you knew that at that point you weren't going to Yuris Familia. You didn't have him. You didn't have Sir Anthony Dominguez, who's probably their second best option to close games. If you know that, how the hell do you go to a guy holding a 4-run lead when you know you can't bring him back in the event that you're going to win, or that you might need him the next night? It's like Joe Girardi literally conceded a split when he had the upper hand in the situation. I have to tell you, man, like, I'm getting there. I'm really getting there with him. And I know it's organizational. I've talked about that on this show. It's not all just Joe Girardi's gut, right? Like, it's a collaborative process. There's a lot of people in that front office that go into how they're going to use guys, when they're going to use them. But come on, man.
Well, I'll say this, and I don't disagree with you, because I was just as frustrated that those guys were not available. And I look at it from a different side of it, in that, man up, man. It's a big game. You got to win it. Throw Knebel that third straight game. I understand Dominguez he had some arm issue. Okay, so he was a little fatigued, arm fatigue.
I get that.
Okay, that's
too.
A little bit different, right? That's a little different. But Knebel was ready to go, and he would have gone a third day. And I don't have in that moment. It's a big game. You're just trying. Looks like you're going to steal a victory from the jaws of defeat with Harper hitting the home run, and you say, okay. In this moment, we've got to do what's right for the team, and if it means resting Knebel the next 2 nights or whatever, but we got to win this game. And you go give him the ball and say, give it a shot, kid. Even if you only go 3 batters or 20 pitches, whatever, you limit them. You got to give it a shot with those guys, and that's where I have a problem with it. But I'll say this, man, far be it from me to ever agree with David Murphy as a columnist, because I don't think he's that great a columnist, if we're going to be honest, okay? But I mean, seriously. But he wrote a column today, and I read it, and I'm like, you know what? He's right. Like, this, you can't blame the manager sometimes. Sometimes it's in today's game, and I'm starting to be convinced this. I'm starting to come around to this, that in today's game, the way that it's run, it doesn't matter who the manager is anymore. The only way that you're really going to impact the game as a manager is if you are a terrible manager and really kind of screwing things up game in, game out. But for the most part, managers are going to be considered competent because they're just doing what the numbers tell them.
All right, can I stop you there real quick? Can I just interject? I agree
sure.
with that, because there's such an emphasis on the numbers, and the Phillies aren't alone in this. There's the vast majority of organizations around Major League Baseball are now numbers oriented, and they let the numbers drive their decisions. There's no doubt about it. So that's what I go back to. I said, this isn't like Joe Girardi just like trying to, navigate a situation using his gut. I mean, it's not like he's doing it on his own. It's a collaborative process. And so in that regard, yes, like if you remove Joe Girardi from the situation and just insert whoever it is, Sam Fold, Raul Ibanez, whoever, Jim Leland, anybody that you want to come up with, like, it's going to be under the premise that, hey, listen, you have to listen to our numbers. You have to follow our organizational philosophies. I understand that. But I do think that there needs to be an override button. And I do think that override button needed to be hit on Tuesday night.
Well, I agree with you, Bob. I agree with you.
And there's something to be said for it. And I'm telling you, you can talk about the numbers all you want. You can talk about the matchups. There remains a human element to professional sports. And like, I agree with what David Murphy wrote, by the way. I read the column as well, and I agree with that. It's hard to be an awful manager in today's baseball. That being said, there are moments that define seasons. There are games that define seasons. And yes, it's one game of 162 at the end of May. I get it. But I'm going to tell you this. There's no way in hell that game does not unfold on Tuesday night and guys in that clubhouse sit there and talk amongst themselves or think to themselves, what the hell are we doing here? You know, this was an opportunity to drop the hammer, to secure a series split and potentially go out and win 3 or even sweep the damn Braves, and they don't do it. And that permeates, that resonates throughout a clubhouse. We talk about the Phillies not having killer instinct or playing with urgency. Those things are all totally blown out of proportion. I agree that it's a lazy cliche often that when we say a team has no urgency, it's just simply because they're not hitting. But man, you can't tell me that there's not some psychological impact that holds at least another game or two or a week or two or just sets in overall when you make decisions like the ones that were made this week in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. But the problem is, Bob, is I think that now you're taking kind of that little bit more of an old school mentality. You're taking more of a baseball coach's mentality. As someone who coaches baseball, you have that. You're thinking that way, right? And like I like to think that way too. That's how if I was coaching baseball, that's how I would coach the game too. Absolutely, you have to have those come to Jesus moments where you decide between the numbers and what you're seeing with your eyes, and maybe sometimes go away from the numbers because what you're seeing with your eyes tells you something different that will make a difference in the game. And I agree with you 100%. I think the argument that's being made here is that they're all chicken shit. Nobody's willing to do that anymore. And that's where I have a problem with the sport. And that's why I tell you that I can't pin this on Girardi. I don't agree with him. I don't agree with the things he said. I would do it a completely different way, but I can't pin it on him if in fact this is the organizational philosophy, and it's an organizational philosophy that's not just the Phillies, but throughout baseball, that this is how we're going to handle things. And it's frustrating as a baseball fan to watch it unfold with the home team.
It's amazing that you just said that, you call them chicken shit. I talked to a player this week who said that Major League Baseball teams hide behind the numbers. They will simply present to you, listen, we've constructed a roster. And there are varying degrees of the overall quality of a roster, but within the roster and the limitations that you have in it or of it, they just simply say, these are the percentages and we will play them and whatever shall be, shall be. There's like no accountability or ownership in the decision. Like at a high school level, if you make as a coach, and let's just say, I mean, there's a lot of times that high school games are decided the moment you step onto the field. One program is simply better than another on any given year, or in any given year. There's just nothing you can do about it. It's like Kansas in college football showing up to Oklahoma. It's not going to happen, right? But there are going to be games where the talent on the field is equal, and there are decisions that we make as coaches that you feel like I helped my team win this game today. Like I did the right thing in the right moment and I pressed the right button, whether it be tactically or psychologically, that gave my team a competitive advantage today. And there are plenty of times, probably even more so, and I can only speak to my own experience at the level at which I coach, which is just varsity high school baseball, but there are plenty of times where I go home and I think about it. And I go, my God, if I didn't call that hit and run and we didn't line into a double play there, or if I would have dropped that bunt when the third baseman was like looking a little bit asleep, if we would have just bunted for that hit, it would have kickstarted a rally there. Or if I would have gone to player A instead of player B in that pitching change, it torments me. It torments me because I don't have all of these numbers to just hide behind. I only have what my eyes tell me. I mean, I do have some data. We do collect data. We do spray charts. We look at things. But I don't have these advanced metrics that these guys can rely on. And you're right. And that's exactly what we're seeing around the game right now.
Yeah. And so in that regard, I mean, I look at the Phillies and I say they lost the game this week because they were afraid to go against what they have in place.
The question I have for you is, did they lose 2 games this week because of it? Do you think that there was a carryover into Wednesday night?
Yeah, Wednesday I think was more defensive issues when you really break it down. I mean, when you look at it, I mean, obviously everybody wants to talk about the big play where 5 guys screwed up at once, and there was only 1 error. I don't know how that happened.
The only person I truly absolve from that situation is Stott. I mean, the ball's deflected by Segura. I have no idea how he's supposed to make that play. Maybe he should have been there sooner, but
I absolve him a little bit because of that, but I still don't think he was in position. I mean, if he's like still running into the spot and has to dive to try and catch the ball,
Right.
I mean, you weren't there to begin with, right? So that's just not being in the right place yet. But yes, he's the least accountable, I guess, in that spot. But yes, everybody wants to talk about that. But if you go back earlier, I mean, the Braves built that lead on a ball that Alec Bohm's just got to play at third base. It's a ground ball, and he turns his body. Instead of staying in front of it, he completely turns his body, and it tries to field it, misses it, and it goes down the line, and all those runs score. If he just stays in front of it, it's a double play ball. It's a double play ball. If he keeps his body in front, even if he boots it a little bit, he's at least getting one out.
Yep.
Out of the two, right? I mean, so you just got to. It's fundamental, And Bryce Harper running the bases in the first inning of that game, gets a nice hit. He had no reason to go for two there, none whatsoever. And he kills a rally in that inning, and they don't score.
Now, he does that all the time, and so I'm not going to sit here. One thing I think is unfair is when you start to.
No, but I'm just saying collectively, if you're looking at reasons why they lost the game.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
I think there are other factors that weren't just the bullpen.
Now, I tweeted out the other night, and I then thought about it. I said, I don't know. Am I making excuses for this guy? I have this idea that Bryce Harper took two or tried to take two in a completely outrageous situation, which he should not have. It's a stupid decision regardless. But I'm trying to think about like the psychology of it. Now, he does this all the time, right? And a lot of times he's successful. Sometimes he's not. Do you think that there was anything to it, though, in that first inning where he goes, you know what? Fuck it. I'm taking two. I'm pissed about last night. I'm going to just try to make something happen.
I mean, that could certainly be part of his mentality. Maybe not even that he's thinking that. It could be subconscious for sure. Like he was really mad. You could tell by the interview the night before, when Salisbury, great questions from Salisbury, in all honesty. He asks him and Bryce gives him the, hey, that's the game today. And then he goes, but you're playing with a torn UCL. And Bryce goes, well, that's the game today. So you can tell that Bryce was steamed, and just off of that. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, that could well be that I have to do even that much more if we're going to win a game. And it turned out to be too much in that spot. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. So when we can talk about the bullpen issues there, because I don't know, Alvarado wasn't available against right-hander the night before, but now he is.
I'm all right with that. I know it's completely insane, right? Like, it's totally contradictory.
I don't like Alvarado.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of getting there with you. Like, I've always been like look at the K per 9, though, and the swing and miss stuff. And I think he is kind of good out there to have in, like, more low-leverage situations. And in the event where the outcome I need is a strikeout, and if I don't get it, we're going to lose probably anyway. And just bringing him into that situation, okay. But at no other point do I need to see Jose Alvarado anymore. I'm there. Yeah. People I think get on Odubel Herrera, who we're going to talk about a little bit more later in the show, about just the vibe that he brings and sort of like this like loser energy. That's kind of where I'm at with Jose Alvarado now. Like there is this like loser energy that his presence, I think, brings. Whether or not that's fair, I don't know, but I'm starting to feel it. It's like I'd just rather see someone else blow it rather than him.
Yeah. No, I mean, so that's why I'm saying, Bob. Yeah, I mean, this was certainly a frustrating 4-game series because they could have done better.
And
they absolutely could have done better.
I know that wins and losses at the end of the day is what's going to drive the overall enjoyment of the product, but I could not help but feel like this week watching it unfold. Yes, it was certainly aggravating late on Tuesday, the missed opportunities on Wednesday, but even last night, Aaron Nola goes out and throws maybe his best start that I've seen from him in a calendar year, and he was phenomenal. We could talk about Joe Girardi yanking him at 109 in the ninth after Nick Castellanos misplays a fly ball. We could debate the merits of why Nick Castellanos is even in the game at that point. The problem is if you make the defensive sub out, it's going to probably be for Schwarber, so he's still going to be in the game anyway.
Well, yeah, but you can move Castellanos to left,
right?
And
exactly.
Quinn in center and Odubel in right.
Exactly right. So we could talk about all of that. I don't know that we even need to get into it, but the thought that I kind of kept having, even early on last night, as Nola's pitching so well, is this product. Like I thought the Phillies would be a flawed team this year, but I thought they'd be a fun team. Like, I thought this would be fun to watch. Like, yes, there were going to be these mind-numbing losses and these late-game collapses. I'm not surprised by any of that. But what I am surprised about is loading the bases with nobody out and watching Alec Bohm get just blown away on 3 pitches, and then a double play follows. And granted, Bohm and Harper have been 2 of their best hitters, and those aren't the guys that you should be specifically frustrated at. But it's just like, replace those 2 last night with anybody else at any point this season. It's a tough watch, man. Like, they are so frustrating to watch on a game-in, game-out basis. You know, Alex Coffey, the new beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, will tweet out, like, I don't know how you guys live like this, or like, I feel sorry for you guys. Like, she's new to it. Like, she hasn't seen this Phillies team on a daily basis over the last few years. And like, I think it's very relatable. It's like, my God, like, this is so damn tough to watch every single night, even when they win.
I agree. And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to identify. I guess it's really funny because there's nothing that really trends, Bob. Right? When you look at it, it's like there's nothing really trending here to say, well, this is why they're frustrating. It's something different every night. And maybe the bullpen's starting to show that it's a little bit more, to the forefront. And you've had now defensive blunders in 2 straight games that kind of cost them a little bit. So maybe you say, okay, defense is now starting to rear its ugly head. And that's kind of where the problems are. But I mean, there's nights. I mean, how many times did we have really good pitching performances and they lose games because the lineup doesn't hit, or the lineup gets hits but doesn't? They're not in the clutch, or they're not getting on base enough, or they're swinging through pitches out of the strike zone too much. Like, it's just random stuff here, there, and everywhere, and you just go and say, well, if they just fix that, it'll be okay. And then they seem to fix that, and something else crops up.
Well, I think that you can look at Aaron Nola's season to sort of support what you're saying. I mean, I tweeted this out last night, but of guys that entered last night with at least 8 starts, the only pitcher in baseball that had a worse team win-loss split was Patrick Corbin, who ironically also won yesterday. But I mean, the Phillies were 1-8 in Aaron Nola's first 9 starts this season, the lone win coming on opening day, and Aaron Nola's been pretty good this year. Now, I know that he had a frustrating start against the Dodgers last Saturday night, but it wasn't like he was he totally blew up and was terrible in that game. I mean, he's given them some damn good starts this year, and the Phillies have not been able to win them because the offense has not been able to properly back him, and it almost happened again last night.
Yeah, and my buddy Michael Barkan ripping him last night again, saying he's been inconsistent. But holy hell, his whip is under 1.
He hasn't been consistent. I mean, he has been consistent. He's been really good. I mean, you're not watching the game. If you haven't looked at Aaron Nola's 10 starts this season and said, this guy's been pretty damn good this year, I don't know what you're watching.
Well, this is 2018 Aaron Nola to me.
I mean, the first start against Oakland was not great. I believe his second start, I want to say it was against the Mets. He struggled. Yeah. And then I believe his third start was against the Rockies, and they didn't win the game, and he didn't get that deep into it. It was like 5+. But from there, he's been really, really good.
I mean, his numbers are comparative to 18. If you look at everything, with the lone exception of ERA+, and I think that's tied into the fact that he gave up some of those runs early in the year. I think over the course of, like, say, if he continues pitching like this over the course of the next 10 starts, that will catch up a little bit. But otherwise, I mean, his whip is better right now than it was then. His strikeout to walk ratio is better now than it was then.
He leads the National League in innings pitched and strikeouts right now. I mean, like, you can't ask for much more than that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's really having a good year. Really having a good year. And it's about time he gets credit for it. You know, being 2-4 doesn't matter.
No,
win-loss record doesn't matter.
No, I think I actually put more stock in win-loss than I know baseball's totally turned a blind eye to it. There's something to be said for pitching to the rhythm of the game and manning up in big moments. But I mean, so many of these losses for him and lack of wins in relation, it's just because the teammates have not performed. It really is not about him not holding the late lead, or I mean, it's amazing.
Well, I'll tell you what, and there's a lot of people, and we've even had this discussion on this show before, Bob, where we wonder about his, we've wondered about his gumption.
Yeah.
We've wondered about how much he wants it, in big moments. And last night, Girardi went to shake his hand after the 8th inning. And he looked at him and said, I want to go back out there.
Yeah.
And Joe stopped, turned around to Caleb Cotham, and you could see it on camera.
He wants to go back in.
He wants to go back in.
I'm stunned by it.
And they're like, okay. But regardless, of the reaction, but to have Nola be that way, to say, I want back in, I'm not done, I want to go back out there, rather than just be like, okay. Like, to me, that's a step beyond what we've seen from Aaron Nola.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that as well. I kind of didn't, that wasn't my takeaway of that interaction so much as it was, like, why did he even have to ask? Like, why did he tell him he was out of the game? Great job. It should have been like, you want the ball? Like, and I know it goes back to the numbers conversation, and I don't want to just keep cycling through the same damn thing again and again, but, like, it just drives me crazy sitting there watching it, that's the interaction. And I'll tell you something else, too. I've been very critical. Like, I don't want to come across as a total fraud and be like, I always believed in Aaron Nola. Like, see? I've been very critical of Aaron Nola. I have questioned whether or not he has the ability to drop the hammer in a big spot, and I think he's answered a lot of those questions, and maybe what we're seeing here is that the struggles down the stretch in 20, the year-long struggles last season, maybe were more about mechanics and just an inability to kind of pinpoint, and get command of his stuff more than it was about a mentality. He's certainly quieting some of those concerns, at least for the time being. I'm not ready to tell you that he's 1A again, but he has certainly answered the bell this season. And if you're the Phillies here going into this series and you look at where you're at in the National League, I do think you can get kind of excited about what the Phillies have at the top of this rotation right now.
Yeah. The whole rotation, with the exception of Suarez, who's been struggling, and I think I might have a solution.
Is it to put Bailey Falter into the starting rotation and let Ranger Suarez go pitch out of the bullpen again?
It's not necessarily that, but yes.
2 birds with 1 stone?
I think if you do that, you're looking at Bailey Falter kind of as a temporary solution. But the bullpen needs fixing. Why not put a guy back into the bullpen who has had success there in the past to help the bullpen? And I would be. I'm not telling you Bailey Falter is going to be the solution there. I mean, if you have to give Bailey Falter 4 or 5 starts and then find another pitcher, on the trade market, okay, fine. But I'm fine. I do with
wonder,
that if
though.
That's the case.
I do wonder right now if the role change. First of all, I think it's tough to ask him to go back into the bullpen because they're basically coming in saying, "You earn this. You have an opportunity to cement yourself as a really good starting pitcher in this league." To ask him to then go back to his previous role, I think there's financial implications to that in the long run, number one. Number two, does your confidence take a hit if they pull the plug that quickly on the experiment? The other part is I wonder if the role change even really matters from a production standpoint. The biggest thing that you see with him right now is that he just simply cannot locate the way that he did a season ago. I mean, he really struggled the other night to consistently get in the strike zone. And one of the things that you said about Ranger Suarez coming into this year is that he's a bulldog. He fears nobody. He'll pound. He attacks. He's relentless. And that's not the pitcher he is right now. And I just don't know if you don't have that command, whether you're coming in to pitch 2 innings in the 6th and 7th or you're getting the ball at the start of the game, if it really matters. So that's what I'm kind of curious about right now with him.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's something that in a smaller, a smaller responsibility.
Maybe
that it's something that he can harness a little bit easier. Or even if he's still struggling with it, pitchers struggle with things all the time and yet still end up with decent results sometimes. I'll give you Kyle Gibson's start the other night, right, where he didn't have his best stuff and still ended up with 8 strikeouts and only allowed 2 runs. And but sometimes you can get through it even without your best stuff in a 2-inning stint as opposed to a 5 to 6 inning stint. Maybe you don't yield as much damage and it looks better.
Did you feel like in the moment when they took him out of the game after the 4th the other night, it looked like he sort of stabilized a little bit? Did you look at that game and say, that was all he had, let him go out on a positive? Or did you think to yourself, really? He finally throws the ball fairly well and now he's out of the game? Like, how do you look at that in real time? Because
Yeah, I was more along those lines with you. I mean, I was a little surprised that he had kind of figured it out a little bit, but I think it was just kind of I think their thought process was it's not, we haven't seen it consistently enough yet, and so I don't kill them for it. I mean, I'd probably let him go another inning and see what happens, and if he starts to get in trouble, then pull him out.
It's probably something I wouldn't bring up or even notice in any other cycle through the rotation. I think just the way I feel about some of the decision making that's been occurring the last week or so, it just makes for another easy thing to pick at,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I want to flip this thing around quickly to the offense. And one of the conversations that we had the other day was about JT Realmuto and how much of a disaster he's been. And then he promptly goes out and is 5 for 12 against the Braves over a 4-game stretch here. He triples, he homers. And just a quick look at the numbers. Coming into this series, he was hitting 224. He's up to 240. His OPS was 613. It's up to 680. Do you think that JT Realmuto just had 4 good games in Atlanta this week, or is this something that he can build on and you say, okay, maybe he's recovering here a little bit?
I hope he's recovering, right? I mean, that's what you want to see. He's one of those guys when he's at the plate. He's a timing guy, right? I mean, he's got that first step where he's got that leg kick, and everything's based around the timing. And when his timing is off and he doesn't get his foot down before the swing comes through, he's a pop-up machine or a weak fly ball machine or swings through pitches. He's just not, his timing's not right. And it was like that for a while. And it was almost to the point where I was like, man, you're a professional hitter. Just drop the leg kick for a little bit. See if you can kind of just figure it out with just like a little step and get your timing back. Then you can go back to it. But he kept with it, and I felt like he was on the ball a lot more. Obviously, 5 hits helps, but even on some of the outs, I felt like he was making decent contact, and he wasn't chasing pitches, and so like it was good to see. I certainly don't think he's toast, like some people in this town do, but at the same time, I'm not ready to sit here and go, oh, he's back. Yeah, don't worry about it. JT's back. Like I think that there's still something that has to be kind of identified there in the long haul. And here's something where I'll be critical of the manager. He needs more time off, man.
I agree.
He just does.
He just fully agree.
It's not saying I want to see Stubbs. Show me Stubbs. It's not that at all. It's that you're going to burn him the hell out. He's catching every game.
And it's a very interesting dynamic. I know we're talking about position players versus pitchers, but the idea here that, we need to protect our pitchers, and this is a concern across the game, by the way. I mean, there are a lot of organizations that are very uneasy about arm injuries with the way that spring training played out this year, with the fact that the schedule, you go from 60 games in 2020 to a full season in 21. What are the ramifications coming into this year about pitchers throwing more than they did the previous year? Arm injuries are of great concern around the game, especially when you look at the dollars that some of these guys are getting. They're investments. You have to protect them. And I know that you treat position players differently than you treat pitchers. But the Phillies are very conservative with their pitching staff. And I know that they're playing a very important stretch of games here. But you do have to protect this guy a little bit. And you're going into a series now this week, 3 night games. This is I would almost say it's a make or break series in terms of the division. The difference between winning 2-3 and losing 2-3 is what? Being 7 out and 9 out? Like that's substantial. Is he sitting this weekend? So at what point do you give this guy a blow? I truly don't know, man.
I don't have a problem starting a backup catcher against a good team in an important game, if it's the right matchup. I really don't. So like I don't have a problem with it. Like I got to look at the Mets rotation here this weekend. I would give Stubbs has not done anything to embarrass you. I mean, he's been fine.
1.144 OPS.
Just give him a start. It's not going to kill you. And look, if you need Realmuto to come up in a key spot, he's there. He can come off the bench and give you that at bat.
Yeah, you're getting. By the way, you're getting Carrasco Friday night. You're getting Walker Saturday, And then the Sunday night game, they're TBD right now. They've got to figure that out.
So you got two righties to start, right?
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe Realmuto gets one tonight. I actually think I'd rather, off of 4 straight starts, I think I'd rather see him get one tonight, and then come back Saturday, Sunday.
With Monday, and then be ready to come home and play on Monday.
So I have a couple more guys I want to just talk about in isolation. It's funny, we never really talk about Bryce Harper on this show, and it's like he's been so good that I don't really even know what to say. I mean, it's like, I think that the tenor of our show is usually to kind of raise red flags and talk about things that are sort of going wrong. And I mean, Bryce Harper, man, I just feel like it deserves an acknowledgement that he has been phenomenal. Just simply phenomenal.
He's best player in the National League right now.
Yeah.
I mean, just if you look at last season, obviously he was the MVP. And then you see what he's doing this season, doing it as a full-time DH, something he's never done before, and something that's not easy to do if you've never done it before, because you're just sitting around and then you just got to go up there and hit. And then people think, "Oh, that's easy. You don't have to play the field." Yeah, but it's staying in the game. It's staying in the moment. It's focusing on who's the pitcher and knowing what you can do against him, and studying the pitcher a little bit. To do that and to be doing it with a torn ulnar collateral ligament in his elbow, like it's generational, right? I mean, people always talk about generational talent, right? And we don't always get generational talent in Philadelphia because we don't. In most sports, we don't get it. We're seeing it here. This is a generational talent, and it's somebody who needs to be appreciated even more than he is, and because I mean, obviously he's a guy who gets it and he plays to the fans and he does the whole fanatic thing, and he does all that right too. But on the field, he is the best player in the National League, bar none for me. And that needs to be recognized.
It's my hope, not that like the Phillies owe it to Bryce Harper. The Phillies are paying Bryce Harper plenty of money, and he will be okay, and he is getting plenty of recognition around the league. But I would love to see, I talked earlier about seasons being defined by moments and being defined by games. The problem for Bryce Harper in Philadelphia is that the numbers are just insane. But the team has not given him the ability to own certain moments, to have these games and these at-bats that when you think about Bryce Harper in a Phillies uniform, you automatically go to this at bat. The one that he's most tied to is the walk-off grand slam against the Cubs, and that was back in 2019. And that game was utterly meaningless in the grand scheme of things. I hope that the Phillies can rally around this guy and give him an opportunity in August, in September, to play meaningful regular season games that puts this team in the postseason, and then let him create those postseason moments that really takes him to a different level. And that's, unfortunately, right now, they're sort of hollow numbers. And listen, I am not a hockey guy. I can't even speak to it remotely with any intelligence whatsoever. But I would tell you that I feel like he's entering like this Claude Giroux territory where you look at the numbers and say, yeah, but so what? And I know that you and Russ fight about him all the time. But the one criticism of him is that I never won anything, and he's a great player, and I don't think he probably got his fair share in this city or this fair due in this city because of it. And I almost look at it like Joel Embiid, like, well, these numbers, and he's right there on the brink of MVP voting, and whether or not you think he should have won it, who knows? But you feel a little bit hollow at the end of it because it hasn't come with any winning.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair.
You like that I said Claude instead of Claude?
You said Claude because that's how it's pronounced.
You like that?
Correct.
The hockey guy, Bobby Pucks.
Proud of you. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair comparison. My initial thought was to compare him not to Giroux but to Lindros, who also did not win here. But the difference I think there, because I think that he's more of that level. I mean, I think he's better in baseball than Giroux is in hockey.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so I think he's more of a Lindros type, but I think where your point comes in and is accurate is that Lindros at least was with teams that had a chance to win a championship. When Lindros was here, they made runs 3 times, to at least a conference final, and then one time to the Stanley Cup final. and had a chance to win the whole thing. They didn't win ultimately, and that was the failure of it. But they had a team good enough to win. Giroux never had that, other than maybe 2010 when they went to the final in his second year in the league. But once he became the best player on the team, they never had a shot to win. And I think that that's a fair comparison in that regard. But yeah, I mean, he's just got to keep doing what he's doing.
And I mean, listen, I know we're 45 games into the season here, and we don't need to talk about Bryce Harper's legacy, I guess, and there's plenty of story to write still, but that's just my fear. Like, I just want to see for him, as I guess an unbiased journalist, but I just would like to see him have the opportunity to really own big time moments, and that will catapult him into another level. I mean, the reason you talk about Chase Utley the way you do, and even guys, far lesser players like Shane Victorino and Jason Worth, is because they had these moments and teams that won and they contributed when the stakes were really high. And he just hasn't had the opportunity to do that because the team that he's played with has flat out sucked to no fault of his own.
Right. And the thing of it is, Bob, and I tell you why you're right to have a little bit of concern, a little bit of worry, a little bit of fear, is that this is his prime. Yeah. We're in his prime. And, far be it from the Phillies, you watch, they'll probably get good when Harper's a part-time player. Right. Or guys.
He's confined to DHing every game.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's just a thought I had last night as I was watching him. I said to myself, I hope this guy really does get a crack at the big moments. Because I think he'll own them. I do. I know in his career in Washington, he didn't really have too many opportunities when he was there, and I just think he will own those moments. I think that he just is that player. So listen, I have two more guys I want to touch on individually before we wrap this thing up. And one is an obvious target right now for criticism. And the other one, I think, sort of not a target of criticism, but a guy I wonder about how he's being utilized. And I'll give you an argument as to why I'm concerned about it. So Alec Bohm, I'll start with that one. Alec Bohm's had a really good year this season. And, I think everyone has to feel really good about where he's at, especially if everyone else in this lineup was playing the way or hitting the way they were supposed to be. You would look at him and say, wow, 287 with a 725 OPS. I'll take that from Alec Bohm. My goodness. That's much more like the player that we saw in 2020 than the player that we saw a year ago. My concern, however, with Alec Bohm is that he has not been great in May. He hasn't been bad, and certainly in relation to some of the other guys in this lineup, he's just nowhere near the top of the list in concerns. But I will tell you, 668 OPS in May, and the Phillies have to hit him second right now because of so many other guys slumping, and that is not ideal. And again, this is not really a criticism of Alec Bohm, but it's a concern about how he's being utilized in this lineup, a very imperfect and inconsistent and struggling lineup right now. That is not ideal, Anthony, and it's one of these things that's getting overlooked because there's all these other problems that are occurring.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's not a number two hitter. That's my one problem with where they're using him. It's not a criticism of Bohm more so than it is a criticism of the team, in that the fact that you have to rely on Alec Bohm and the production that he's giving you to be your number two hitter, who in a lot of places is the best hitter in the lineup. Phillies Harper wants to hit three, so that's where they put him. But in a lot of places, the two hitter is the best hitter in the lineup. The fact that we're going Rhys Hoskins, Alec Bohm 1-2 is all you need to know. I mean, that's a damning thing for the organization, is that those guys should not be your 1-2 hitters, and yet they have to be because everyone else has been kind of a disappointment.
Well, I just wonder what the true level internally, the true level of concern is about. I think the Phillies have a comfort level with Rhys Hoskins. Like, they know what he is. They know that he's going to get really hot, and the OPS will jump 40 points over 4 games, and the power numbers will somehow end up there. But I do wonder if they look at Kyle Schwarber this morning and say, wow, 194 with the 734 OPS. That's not great. And I understand that Kyle Schwarber is a very streaky hitter. But the guy that I guess I'm taking a long-winded approach at coming to is Nick Castellanos. And the idea was supposed to be, and if you look at his splits from last season, and granted, last year was a great year for him, but he's been a pretty good hitter for a long time. not that he's slump proof, but that he's not supposed to be this guy that gets fooled over a prolonged period of time. He's supposed to be a little bit immune to that. He's supposed to be a guy that gives you really good hard contact consistently, professional grade at bats. And I can live with the fact that Nick Castellanos was 2 for 18 in this series in Atlanta. And I can even live with the fact that he's hitting 250 right now, and the OPS is a shade over 700. It's not good, and he's got to be a lot better. But the thing that I've really kind of struggled with watching him is that he looks lost. And now he doubled late in last night's game to dead center. He was on it. It was a good swing, a very rare good swing for him lately. Maybe he gets going. But I am stunned to the extent that he just looks overmatched and totally unsure of himself right now.
I think he's trying way too much to be an opposite field hitter right now.
Did you see him the other night? He had runners in scoring position, and he was just trying to, I think it was Tuesday night, I want to say. He was trying to go the other way, and he grounded out hard. Right at, I want to say, first base. It was shifted out. Olsen was shifted out. Doesn't knock in a run, and you're like, dude, let it rip.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he's late on those fastballs down and in the zone that I think in years past he would just crush to left field. And because I don't know if it's something where he's trying to prevent a shift, if he's trying to take advantage of what the defense is giving him all the time. I don't know what the approach is, but it's off. And I think we brought it up a little bit before everybody else did. I would go back, I think it was 2 episodes ago where we went, Castellanos starting to look like he's not there right now.
Yeah.
And now here we are, 10 games later, and it's like it's noticeable and everybody's talking about it. It's like, okay, I mean, you got to see it coming and address it when that happens, and not wait for it to become epidemic. And right now it's a little bit of an epidemic.
Yeah, his hard hit percentage has gone down from 40.4% last year to 31.2% this year. I mean, that's a substantial drop. And I just wonder, like, obviously he's not hitting the ball with as much authority, but it also looks to me like, he's kind of guessing a little bit. Now, the numbers don't really bear that out, though. Like, I will say, if you look at his outside the zone swing percentage, so balls that he offers at that aren't strikes, it's pretty much, his numbers they're actually identical to what they were a year ago, 40.4%. So, the outside zone swing percentage is basically the same. He's making less contact outside the strike zone, but the actual approach and plate discipline, it sort of stacks up similarly. But so is it what is it? It's just he has not made the same type of contact that he made a year ago, and I don't know if that's approach, pull side, opposite, wanting to go opposite field too much, but it's just a little bit of a concern right now. Like, they might not need both Schwarber and Castellanos to get hot at the same time, but they need one of these guys to start being the player they thought that they were going to, they were getting when they signed them. I mean, they just cannot continue with Bryce Harper and then Alec Bohm hitting singles to right and that being your offense.
Yeah, and not only that, only 5 home runs.
Yeah.
Through 2 months of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on pace for about 17 home runs at that rate, 17, 18 home runs.
Which would be half of what he had last year.
Yeah.
And he's had, he hasn't been that low since 16.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in the 20s, 17, 18, 19. I mean, you skipped 2020 because it was a shortened season, but even then he had 14 home runs in 60 games, right? So that would have been a 30-plus home run season. Then 34 and 21. He's only got 5. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, I think he is a career professional hitter. He's never really this bad. You take that 2020 season aside, again, it was only 60 games, and if you look at his career, I mean, he's a career over 800 OPS, career 277 hitter. He's going to hit 25 to 30 home runs. All those things are good. And just for some reason right now, he's not trending.
I'm still reasonably confident that both he and Schwarber get to where reasonably you'd expect them to be, but I think 45.
Really? Are you with Schwarber? Are you with Schwarber?
I do. I think that Schwarber is still going to hit 35 to 40 homers for this team. I actually thought he had one last night.
Yeah.
And it didn't go out, so it doesn't matter. But I guess I still think that the power numbers are going to be there. Now, like when I say that, I don't think that he's going to get to the 920 OPS or the 928 OPS of last year. But do I think that, like, if you go to 2017, like, let me just give you these numbers real quick. 129 games, 782 OPS, 18 and 823, 19, 870. Like, do I think that Kyle Schwarber gets to, like, 790? I do. Because I don't expect him to hit 194. I expect him to hit 225. And I've seen some at bats from him lately where he's been able to work counts, and it looks like the discipline is coming back a little bit. So no, I mean, I don't think you're going to get an all-star year from the guy, but like if you said over under 230 average, I'd probably take over by a hair. And if you said over under 780 OPS, I'd probably take the over. I just think there's a little bit more there. I think he goes on a run. Like I think that he's a streaky hitter, a flawed hitter, and a frustrating hitter, but I do think he just goes on one of these like 2-week stretches where he goes bananas and it kind of carries him.
I hope you're right, Bob, because I think that he is what I always thought he was, and that's Dave Kingman. You don't remember Dave Kingman.
A little bit before my time, but I do know, I know the idea of Dave Kingman.
Well, I mean, it's a guy that hits home runs, walks, or does nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's leading the league in strikeouts right now with 58. I think he's either first or second.
I think that him and Swanson have been like rotating.
Back and forth. But 58 strikeouts in 155 at bats. Yeah. That's not good.
No, it is not. I'm a big put the ball in play guy too.
Put it in play. If he puts that ball in play, that average will come up to what you want it to be. Not that 225 is anything to be excited about, but I'd like him to be more of a 240. That's kind of where I would hope with the money that they signed him for. Can you be a 240 hitter? I don't need you to be 266, 374 like you were last year, but can you be 240, 350? Like if you're doing that and hitting 30 home runs, I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that. And your OPS probably hits 800 at that point. But without that, and even still, he got the 10 home runs. What else does he have? He's got 6 doubles.
I have to say.
And what, 18? It was 14 singles? Like, it's got nothing.
I listen, I get it. I understand. I do. I have to say this. I hate being this show that continues to bring this guy up, and he's not been very good in May. He's only hitting 233 with a 293 on base percentage, or I'm sorry, a 258 on base percentage, and he's slugging 350 this month. But you look at the box score after last night's game, and the next best regular in terms of OPS is not Gene Segura, it's not Alec Bohm, it's not these guys that are getting paid $20 million a year. It's Odubel Herrera, who prior to his final at bat was one of only 2 Phillies with an OPS of over 800 late in the game last night. Now, he made an out and he went down to 793. He's 2 for 4 last night with 2 more runs batted in. He made an absolutely horrible play on Wednesday night. Maybe one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen in the history of the sport, which is really saying something, especially as an observer of the Phillies on a nightly basis. And I understand the idea that, like, he is not a winner and that he lacks focus and that he's just not a winning player. But I think the thing I want to say right now is, like, what would this offense be without Odubel Herrera? Like, we don't even need to get into all the other stuff. Like, I get why people, like, don't want the guy here anymore, right? Like, we've had that conversation on this show. I think we did about, like, 25 minutes of it, the one show. And go back and listen to it, and that's my stance on all that stuff. But from a purely baseball standpoint, like, he's kind of helping keep this thing afloat right now from a season-long perspective.
Even in the game Wednesday, He hits the home. Was it the?
Yeah.
He hit a home run, and then they had the big 2-run hit, and kind of got the game back tied again. I mean, you're sitting there going, freaking Odubel, man, like comes through. And it's just like he's another streaky guy, but he's less streaky than these other guys. In other words, like he goes in and out of his slumps quicker. He's hot, but maybe not for a real long time. Then he slumps, and it's okay. There's Odubel being Odubel, and then he gets back on it again. Like I think that his ebbs and flows are much closer together than the Schwarbers and Castellanos have been. And yeah, I mean he's been crucial to them against right-handed pitching. I think if you look at, I was arguing with Junior about this because Junior hates him.
Everyone hates him. I mean, and it's like understandable. Like he does stupid stuff. He's got the off-field baggage. Like I get it.
Yeah. Well, my son hates every Philly. I mean, he really does. He's miserable. But we were looking at the numbers and we were looking at it versus righties, and it's like, yeah, you know what? Against right-handed hitters, against right-handed pitchers, he's good. He's good. He's an 8. I think if we, I would have to look at it after the last couple games because we looked at it earlier in the week. I bet you he's over 800 OPS against righties this year. And so, like, when you look at that and say, well, of course you want that. You want that in your lineup. I mean, it doesn't help because his defense in center field isn't great, right? I mean, you'd rather have Roman Quinn in center field, even though Quinn made that boneheaded play on Tuesday night that cost the game in the bottom of the 9th inning. But against right-handed pitching, like I would argue that he's probably, like you said, top 3 on the team splits against righties. I'm pulling it up here. I'm just trying to, vamp until the computer loads it for me. Where are we at here? Where's verse platoon splits? Here we go. 787 is his OPS against righties this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, he's actually better against lefties.
Better against lefties,
but it's on very well. It's a very
smaller sample size. And that would be my thing.
Small.
I wouldn't bank on that as the sample size grows for those numbers to stay, linear. But I do think, again, this goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning of the season. If you utilize him properly and you don't overexpose him and you let him hit at the bottom of your order, all of a sudden you've got a decent complementary bat at least for less than $2 million, which on a team full of guys making 8-figure salaries, you do need. And Dave Dombrowski actually talked about that earlier this week. Like that, basically, there's some frustrations there with him, but overall, he's done an okay job. And I not that I'm like willing to tip my cap to him or anything, but given the way that some of these guys have performed this year, I mean, like he's been a valuable piece for them.
Are you a believer in OPS plus?
Yeah, I am, just in relation to where a guy stacks up against the rest of the position.
So do I.
Yeah.
I do too. Right now he's 124.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good, man.
It's pretty good. That's for the whole season. He's 124.
I didn't prepare this, but I bet you could do the blind player A, player B thing and make Odubel Herrera player A and put him up against some pretty good names that are player Bs, and he'd have better numbers. So
yeah, I mean that 124, just for people who don't know what OPS plus is, that means that he's 24% better than the average center fielder in Major League Baseball right now.
It's amazing. That's amazing.
I think about that.
It's a shame, I'd be a lot more excited about the forthcoming return of Mickey Moniak, who was one of the last people, or one of the last points I wanted to touch on before we, put a bow on things. If Mickey Moniak were right-handed, I'd be really excited about him returning because I'd say, wow, you might have a really good center field platoon split here going on, but I don't know how they're going to leverage Moniak and Herrera together. So, like, Harper has to stay in the lineup as DH. So it's not like, okay, Moniak coming up can work as a defensive replacement even as for a guy like Castellanos or Schwarber. I mean, he can, like, late in games. But I just don't know where the fit is there. I also am a little bit concerned that people are expecting so much out of Mickey Moniak, who the expectations, quite frankly, just should not be that high.
Yeah, I agree. He's still got to prove it to me. But if, let's just say he comes in here, right? and he's given a chance, and he hits like he was hitting in spring training, right? And he's feeling good about it and everything else. And he's playing really well. Obviously, you got to keep him in the lineup. So what you can do is I think you can kind of make Odubel like that rotating fourth outfielder and give those guys a freaking day off.
Yeah.
I mean, Schwarber and Castellanos, they don't get days off either. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you don't. With the exception of Camargo, like coming in and playing every once in a while, at shortstop or second base. Segura's got a couple games off. Like these guys, nobody gets days off on this team. Like the whole lineup plays. So I think it gives you, if Moniak can come in and be a good left-handed hitter, you could then make Odubel play for, hey, Nick, you get a game off today. Or Schwarber, you get, even though you're left-handed too, you get a day off today, kind of thing. And I think that could help a little bit. I mean, but you're right. It's not an ideal quote unquote platoon situation. It's one where you got to kind of manage it and massage it a little bit to make it work.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not like Matt Vierling went down to Lehigh Valley and has been tearing the cover off the ball either. I mean, he's got 50 at bats down there. He's one homer, hitting 240. I mean, he's been okay, but it's not like, oh wow, he really figured it out down there. We'll see him again shortly as well.
Right.
It's just an imperfect fit, and obviously a lot of it starts with the injury to Bryce Harper and the fact that he can't be out there. That does hurt. All right, so listen, I don't know that we need to preview the Mets series. I think we both agree the Phillies need to win 2 out of 3 games, and I don't know that picking game by game results is really an exercise that we need to have. So I'm comfortable if you are just sort of letting this weekend play out before we start really getting to Mets Phillies. So do you have a one last thing or anything else you want to get to before we?
I do have a one last thing, Bob. I'm going to ask you a question that was actually asked on ESPN, and see if you agree. The Yankees, they had their another big comeback win. I think they have 13 this season now, which leads Major League Baseball. And the question that ESPN posed is, if you're a comeback, if you have a lot of comeback victories, what does that say about you as a team? Does that say that you have that gumption, that ability to hey, we're never out of it, we're going to fight till the end, the last 27th out, or does it say that you have a problem getting behind earlier in the game? And so I guess that question. I mean, right now, at the moment, the 2022 Yankees have the 9th best come from behind win percentage per 162 games in the history of Major League Baseball. It's 9th best at the moment. Phillies are obviously, I don't know where the Phillies are, although there is a Phillies team that was higher on that list. The 1977 Phillies had the 4th best come from behind win average per 162 games. But what does that say about you as a team? Would you rather have a team that's always coming back and you say, oh, they're never out of it, or do you like to have a team that just we're ahead? Let's get we're a good team. We get ahead early.
That's a great question, man. I got to tell you kind of caught me off guard with this a little bit. I really have to think about it. When you first pose the question, you say, wow, it shows a lot about resilience and character and never give up. And I do believe, I actually talked about this earlier in the show, that winning games late can really be a spark for a team. But yeah, I mean, in order to have to come back, you also have to trail. And, that means you've obviously been trailing, and there's a reason you're trailing, whether it's your starting pitching or your bullpen in the middle innings is letting you down or whatever the case may be, or your offense isn't performing up to standard. I would still say, and I don't know what the conclusion was or where you stand on this, I would still think that teams trail a lot in baseball, and if you're able to overcome deficits late, that says a lot about character and probably says a lot that you're a good team. I have to guess that there's a direct correlation between teams at the elite levels of comeback wins and being a good team overall.
Yeah, it ends up being that. That's what they kind of concluded most of it. Of the 47 World Series champions, 7 of them led their league in comeback.
Wow.
Comeback.
Led the league.
7 of
wow.
7 of 47. That's a pretty good number.
It is, yeah.
So it tells you that. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is the teams that are right behind the Yankees this year in come from behind wins, Dodgers, Padres, Brewers.
So yes. So what it says is, teams trail and a lot of them fold and the really good ones come back. I mean,
yeah. So yes. So if your team is a good come from behind team, that's a positive.
The
So we'll have to
Phillies.
see if the Phillies. I mean, they've had a couple this year, but they
Now,
also had
how do they qualify, or how do they quantify? I guess qualify is the right way of saying this. The come from behind, is it ninth inning comebacks, or is it like seventh inning or later, or like we were down 2-0 in the fourth?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to.
Just curious, but regardless,
Yeah.
I will tell you that I believe going into Sunday's finale against the Dodgers, so the Phillies give out game notes like every team does in every sport, and I believe that the Phillies were 0-18 entering the ninth inning trailing heading into last Sunday, and they obviously came back and won the game, and ironically, 2 nights later, they had an opportunity to get their second come-from-behind win in the ninth, and they didn't get it, so...
Yeah. Yeah.
They're stuck on one so
yeah.
far.
Yeah, well, Phillies are going to need a few more,
Yeah.
I think, especially with this bullpen.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up, Bob. That's a good episode, and hopefully this weekend is a good series with the Mets, and we have some positivity to talk about. I don't know if we'll do it Monday because it's a holiday, but we might be back on Tuesday. I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
But either Monday or Tuesday will be the next episode. But I think it'll be a good weekend series for sure.
All right, sounds good. Well, for Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. Thank you for listening to Cross Up. Be sure to check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we will talk to you soon. Everybody have a good Memorial Day weekend.